So welcome back to DHR. I'm your host, Tom Nixon, with my co-host here, Joseph Fenwick. And we are going to discuss a video that we have all seen on YouTube out of a channel called Omaha News Now, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
And he is confronting some HPD officers, or he's trying to initiate a confrontation with some HPD officers outside the North Belt Patrol Station.
Yeah, let me break the video down for you real quick. Okay, it starts out with this knucklehead right here.
Jolene, arrest warrants have been issued for the three men, one of them no stranger to Oklahoma City police. This is all going back to an incident that happened just 1 week ago.
We were just wanting to know why you're hanging out over the Carver Center, just hiding behind the bushes.
Oklahoma City police on scene after a bizarre call to 911 on Thursday, April 29th.
There's a guy hiding in the bushes like ninja style, and I don't know what he's doing. He might be trying to plant some dope on the facility. It's a correctional deal.
It was a call that would eventually launch an investigation and social media outrage into an Oklahoma City police officer's use of force. The department sharing this body cam footage of the incident. In it, you can see an officer approaching this man, Floyd Wallace Jr., outside of a correctional center on South May. Officers didn't know it at the time, but Wallace is a self-proclaimed First Amendment Auditor from Nebraska, who spends his time recording law enforcement officers across the country.
Okay, he's got a YouTube channel. Anybody can have those now. I don't know if you know. But he goes around all around the country antagonizing police officers. Right here he starts, and you can see he's trying to act suspiciously. He's shifting the camera back and forth. He's walking on the grass right by the sign, trying to bait the police officers. He doesn't get the response he wants, so he keeps moving around, and then right here at 4 minutes, or 3 minutes 58 seconds, I believe, he crosses the street, not at a sidewalk. Not at a crosswalk. Okay, so he goes on along, and he gets, he's wanting confrontation with the police, and right here he gets it. The female officer here, she makes initial contact. She tells him to, keep his hands out of his pockets, stay right there, and he puts his hands in his pockets. Then he takes them out. Then he puts his hands up and keeps advancing on her. She's got the taser. Tells him to get on the ground. Then he looks around and realizes, oh, he's surrounded. And so the officers, Houston, we don't play that ridiculousness. So he's surrounded by the other officers. They come in very quickly and handcuff him like you should. And you can hear him shouting, "Don't touch my phone! Don't touch my phone! Don't touch my phone!" Which to me would be a clue. Touch the phone. Look at it. See if there's something in it that can hurt you. But then they start searching him. They take the stuff out of his pockets. Right here, you can see them taking the stuff and putting it on the hood of the patrol car. He's steadily running his mouth. Now you see these people here have just magically appeared. This guy, okay, they're obviously in cahoots with the guy. They start videoing everybody, which these officers are, not even they're not concerned about it at all, as you can see. So they search him, and right here you can see Officer Wynn put the money back in his pocket. Okay, you can see Officer Wynn's arm action. You can see he's putting the money back in his pocket. They continue to talk to him. He tries to get in their face, and he getting their name and badge number, and they're all pointing at their name and badge number, letting him do it. And then right here, he advances quickly towards the female officer. I think what he was trying to do was bait the other officers into jumping to her defense. But she stands her ground, and because she's got a lot of backup there, so she just kind of looks at him differently. And then I love it here, because then after he goes to her and challenges her, she walks forward and goes, "Hey, look, she starts talking to him nicely, but then she's like telling him, "Look, I'm not scared of you at all." So then he starts making these claims about officers stealing his stuff, and they took my shit. They took my shit. He keeps saying that. You notice nowhere in the video, and you can watch the whole video yourself, he doesn't show his pockets anywhere in the video.
So, did you get my
And then
stuff or
so
what?
they let him go, and he continues to harass and
So they took
harangue
my
the officers and shout
So
stuff.
you guys took my money, huh?
And the officers kind of look like they're
fucked
scattering,
up.
but this is here at the station, so they're just scattering to go back to whatever entrance they came out of from the station to confront this guy.
All right.
And then you see right here, they get together and have a little
You took
powwow.
some money out of my pocket.
Okay, there was obviously planned, and then I don't think it went the way they wanted it to.
What you need to do with that money, you need to count it, put it all together in a nice roll. Yeah, instead of having it all just wadded up like that.
So the question becomes, what could the officers have done to maybe resolve that situation quickly?
Yeah. There's several things that could have been done, and now, one, I'm not saying anything. The officers did anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, no, I thought they handled it as well as could be expected
Yes,
under the
exactly.
circumstances. Now, as older, more, I don't know, I guess you might call veteran police officers, in the old days would have just arrested the guy for jaywalking.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have just snatched it, because that's what, when Joseph alluded earlier to something called walking in the street where sidewalk provided, or crossing the street, not at a crosswalk. We call that jaywalking everywhere else, but in Houston we have a specific city ordinance against it, and that's how you have to title the ticket that you write someone if you're going to stop them for jaywalking. We call it crossing the street, not at a crosswalk. Okay, and that's the complaint that actually goes to the court. Now you can also actually take someone into custody for that offense and put them in jail for it, depending on the circumstances. My personal humble opinion, this would be one of those circumstances. And unfortunately for officers here at the Houston Police Department, they have this very robust general orders policy manual that regulates pretty much everything they do on a daily basis. The problem is some of the terms or some of the policies are written in vague and ambiguous terms that result in officers second guessing whether or not they should or shouldn't do something. Because the biggest fear any officer has really is getting fired under the general orders.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're afraid of getting shot. They're aware of it, but that is the ever-present fear that you have these days, especially.
So what we're kind of looking at today is General Order 500-14, which is the one dealing with Class C misdemeanors, right? And so the policy starts out by saying, unless otherwise directed by policy, persons who commit serious Class C misdemeanors, for example, offenses related to violence, narcotics, vice, breaches of the peace, or criminal mischief, shall normally be incarcerated. If extenuating circumstances make incarceration unwarranted, officers shall seek approval from a field or station supervisor before issuing a citation to a serious Class C violator. Okay. So when paragraphs like that are inserted into policy manuals, what winds up happening is officers become anxious about making a decision, knowing that they may have to contact a supervisor. So then what ends up happening is they contact a supervisor anytime because they're not sure, well, should I put this guy in jail or should I just write him a ticket? Well, let me ask my supervisor. And then, of course, supervisors get mad because they don't want to be contacted 15 times a day by, 8 different police officers asking
you're supposed
the same question.
you're supposed to be the police.
Right. So they've kind of extracted discretion from the street officer, right, from the patrol officer. And a lot of these policies that have come out lately, especially under Art Acevedo, this policy came out in October of 2019, October 4th of 2019. And it's actually signed by Art Acevedo himself. So he wrote this policy. And he has a very bad habit of extracting discretion from patrol officers. For some reason, he just doesn't trust patrol officers to do the job, to make the decision, to put on the handcuffs or not put on the handcuffs. Instead, he constantly tries to insert supervisors in these decision loops, right? Mm-hmm. And where officers at the scene, before I would say Harold Hurt showed up in the early 2000s, officers were expected to make these decisions.
Yeah.
They were not expected to contact a supervisor about
every little thing.
Yeah, making menial decisions like, am I going to put a Class C misdemeanor person in jail or not? That's your decision. You make it. It's your discretion. So we expect you to exercise that discretion.
And that's the first paragraph that addresses if you have somebody with a more serious Class C, which I thought their Class Cs were all less serious. But anyway,
Yeah, that's the other confusing part.
They tell you you're going to arrest them, but you must get a supervisor's approval to just issue them a ticket. Then in the second part, it talks about how the police officers, if you have thank you. So the person who commits an offense with less serious Class C offenses, okay, they're all the same Class C.
Yeah, they're all the same Class C misdemeanor.
And for example, traffic violations, regulatory offenses, okay, shall normally be issued a citation. In some circumstances, it may be necessary to incarcerate the violator to accomplish the police mission. The decision to do so shall be consistent with the department's values and principles. You notice in the first part, they said you will get a supervisor. In the second part, they gave you this vague instructions on remaining inside the department's values and principles. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, it's I think deliberately vague.
Well, certainly. I mean, what does it mean? It means we're going to stay within the values and principles of the police department. Yes, we all know that. But police departments don't run on values and principles. They run on general orders, policy, and a law to follow. Why were they specific in the very first part of it and then ambiguous on the second?
So I think what this does is it opens the door to excessive discipline of officers when they're trying to exercise their discretion in particular cases. And so they start looking at whether or not the arrest the officers engaged in has attracted media attention or political attention.
Yeah, right? And what that does is it allows them to make the decision later. Okay, if it's two different suspects, one is a big fat white guy wearing a Trump hat and a Confederate flag pin on his hat, is definitely going to be treated different than a Black Lives Matter guy.
And that's how we've seen. We've actually seen that.
We see it happen all the time.
Because during the Black Lives Matter protests, they were throwing rocks at windows, they were committing acts of criminal mischief, and nobody was arrested.
Yeah, wholesale violence and arson.
And then you worked a protest where it was older white Republicans. Remember with SRG coming out there, and they wanted to arrest all the old white Republicans for the smallest infraction against the law.
Yes, I was rather disappointed that day.
And it was amazing because people you thought were themselves maybe conservative police officers were out there, wanting to arrest these elderly Republican protesters.
Yes.
And it's like, wait, hold on. Let's keep ourselves, in check here. And you realize that in a lot of decisions lately, it wasn't like this even 10 years ago. It wasn't like this 20 years ago when we started policing.
No, not at all.
Just this advent of very jaded or biased policing has kind of made itself ubiquitous. It's just everywhere. And we label this particular group peaceful protesters when they're setting cars on fire, but they're mostly peaceful, so we're not going to. But this other group, they belong to a different political spectrum.
Yes.
So we're going to enforce the law differently to them. And I think a lot of this is kind of wearing out police officers because there's no consistent policy in place.
Yeah, it really is.
These vague and ambiguous policies. And what you wind up with is these officers in this confrontation are just doing everything they can to de-escalate the situation. Mm-hmm. They don't want to arrest anyone. And this is, take note of this, audience members, not police officers. You saw a lot of restraint from these officers to not arrest this guy.
Tremendous.
They had every reason in the world and every valid opportunity in the world to arrest this guy that was egging them on. Instead, they did everything they could to de-escalate the situation, not arrest anyone, and send everyone on their way. So if you hear someone complain that police officers always arrest you or never, won't shy away from putting handcuffs on people, you've seen in this video the exact opposite, where they actually went through every effort they could to de-escalate this disturbance created by the guy behind the camera, the YouTube channeler, right? He was doing everything he could to inspire some act of violence by the officers against him.
Yeah, and that brings me to my point that I want to put out there is that guys like this guy goes all around the country doing this, and you can look up his channels if you want to, and he goes from different police departments. How many times is he going to do this? And you notice in the videos, he pushes it each time. He pushes it. He pushes his luck with this video. He keeps approaching the female officer, and she doesn't tase him. She restrains herself because the guy's surrounded. But he's going to keep on doing this. He is a danger to himself and police officers.
Well, eventually what's going to happen is he's going to make a mistake. He's going to do it in front of an officer in another city, and that officer is going to arrest him.
Yeah.
And he's not going to expect it, and then he's going to react improperly,
Yes.
and that reaction is going to escalate things, and then he's going to wind up at the blunt end of a taser, or
get shot, for pushing the hands in the pockets and then coming up and then putting his hands up real fast and in a quick manner to confuse the officers.
So, I mean, I guess in conclusion, my point of view is I think these officers had every justification to handcuff this guy, search this guy, and take him to jail, and they did not. So, hey, kudos to the officers out there for showing restraint and for doing everything they could to de-escalate the situation and keep the peace and send everybody on their way, because that's really ultimately their job, is to keep the peace and send everybody on their way. And so to those officers, I say thank you and an outstanding job.
Excellent job. Excellent. And you showed a lot more restraint than Tom and
I would have. Yeah.
Tom and I would have.
Well, yeah, I would have.
Okay, now
I would have hooked him up.
In the exactly. I mean, we would have been there for 2 minutes.
But then I love writing IED letters, so I don't mind. I mean, that's like my bread and butter.
I don't like that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, one other thing I want to say that this guy was, and he was caterwauling about them violating his Fourth Amendment rights. When they were going in his pockets, and they took his money and all his property and put it on the hood of the car.
He was in custody.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got inventory.
Exactly.
You do. You get to search him.
And the police officers, to let you know, 38.02, if a person, you can demand an ID from a person who is a witness to a crime, or you believe has committed a crime, or that you have lawfully detained.
And that's 3802 of the Code of Criminal Procedure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. The Code of Criminal Procedure. It gives you the criteria. There's sometimes you don't have to give an ID unless, of course, you've been lawfully detained and it's illegal to lie about your name. And he even says at one point, I'll show you right here.
Hey, I want to get to know you and I want you to know us. You want to run me for warrants. That's what you want to do. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to help you put me in jail.
And he tells the officer, "You're not going to check me for warrants." Well,
I am now.
Yeah, I wasn't before, but that's a good idea. And you can, you are able to get him identified at this point. Okay, so and then he accuses the officers of stealing. Well, great. Then we're going to do a report. Oh, I don't want to now. Sorry, you already made the accusation against a public servant. We're going to keep our department clean. So what's your name? And go ahead and turn your pockets out here on camera. Well, we got camera. Turn your pockets. You don't want to? Then my suspicions that you're lying is going up.
Right.
So, you can definitely get him ID'd. And this guy needs to be out there on every police department needs to know who he is.
So, since the kind of the advent of body cameras on every officer on patrol, I've noticed that, a couple of different things, right? In one regard, officers are less nervous now about being recorded.
Oh, definitely.
Because they're always being recorded. However, I've also noticed that there is a certain amount of body camera anxiety disorder that officers might exhibit, where sometimes they are hesitant to use force in a particular amount of force because they know they're being recorded all the time. And I think that that isn't always beneficial to the officer.
I don't see how it could ever be beneficial.
Because that moment of hesitation gives the suspect that tiny or that singular moment where they can take tactical advantage over the officer.
Exactly.
And so I kind of wish the command staff would be a little bit more clear about what they're going to use body camera video for, number one.
Yes.
And number two, I wish the command staff at the Houston Police Department would be a little bit more supportive of officers when they have to use force. so they don't hesitate when they need to use force. And as we've seen recently, even when they're, serving warrants and they're standing at the door and they've got their weapons out, I still, you can hear in their voice, they're a little hesitant to cuss someone out, because sometimes throwing out a curse word gets someone's attention, right? But because you're being videoed, you don't want to use foul language.
Yeah, we used to teach when I was a trainer and instructor at the academy. I'd rather MF somebody than shoot them.
Yeah, but not now.
Now, you MF'd him. Well, I didn't have to shoot him. Then you just MF'd him.
Yeah, and now you're getting 3 days off.
Yeah, exactly. For
improper procedure or improper conduct.
Yes.
I think people who make these decisions to discipline officers or not have completely forgotten what it's like to be on the street. Mm-hmm. Just completely forgotten, or don't care, or they're holding officers to this impossible standard of perfection that just doesn't work, because being a patrol officer is not a perfect world. It is a very imperfect world, and sometimes you got to cuss someone out to get their attention, especially when that's how they talk to each other in their home.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And Tom and I didn't go around just and I never did, and I know he didn't, just cursing at people. We're talking about escalating rather than shooting somebody. I want to maybe curse, to get their attention. Rather than having to tase somebody, I may curse to get their attention. Well, that's just not acceptable now. It's and it becomes from policies that are ambiguously written to dare you to do it. This second part of that policy is a dare. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead and arrest him. See what happens.
Yeah. Maybe we'll discipline you.
Maybe we won't.
It depends on if it winds up on the media.
Exactly.
And if I see you on Channel 13 or well, then you know what?
Why is the first part clear? Exactly. Call a supervisor before you do this and that. And the second part is ambiguous. Why is that?
Because a decision to do so shall be consistent with the department's values and principles is so vague and ambiguous as to be unenforceable.
Yeah, exactly. Or hyper enforceable.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem is the people in the command staff are making decisions based upon their own perceptions, not the perceptions of the officer at the scene confronting the suspect or confronting whoever, that results in the use of force or results in the handcuffs coming out. And I think that creates this anxiety in officers, really, because you never know when you're going to get fired.
Or discipline.
Yeah.
And people, disciplined at the police department now, they give out 5-day suspensions for personality conflicts between two officers. 5-day suspensions for that. That's a week without pay. Okay, I don't know if any of you out there would think, well, police officers need to be disciplined. How many times did you go a week without pay because because a customer complained?
Right. But in this instance here, with these officers in this video, I think they did an outstanding job. And,
yes, very good.
I think that, unfortunately, patrol work is messy. And sometimes you get caught in these messy situations, and that's what this guy was trying to create. He was desperately trying to create a messy situation. And I think these officers did a great job of avoiding it completely.
Yeah, they did a really good job. I got a kudos to the female officer who, when he did come up to her, she even walked forward to tell him, hey, look. And the thing of it is, she's a Houston police officer assigned to the North Division. Dude, she deals with 10 people a day who would make you their girlfriend in jail. Okay. So she's not afraid of you or your cameras.
Yeah, no, so I think they did. I think they did really well.
I do too.
All right. So hey, thanks for joining us here on DHR, the Dirty Hands of the Republic. We just want to help inform the public of, what it takes sometimes to be a patrol officer. They make great shows about homicide investigators and prosecutors and CID, criminal intelligence division guys, but nobody ever just looks at life from the point of view of a patrol officer, and it's really messy. It's messy every day. And sometimes you have to make the best of a bad situation. And in this case, I think these officers made good decisions, and they made the best of a bad situation. So Once again, thanks for joining us. Hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you again soon.